Coming up on this episode of Up for Debate, it's the third part in our exciting multi-part look at America's favorite defunct national pastime, the XFL. Tonight, kick off the debut game. We've got the Hitmen. We've got the Outlaws. We've got a great game. Let's get into it right now. This is Up for Debate Presents. The X stands for nothing, the unbelievably true story of the XFL. Tonight, episode number 129, recorded November 14th, 2018. Chapter 3, The Mad Scramble. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Up for Debate Presents. I am Sean Jennings, joined by our own head of cheerleading for the XFL, Matt Mariani. He'll go deep with the cheerleaders any day.
I feel uncomfortable.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, I feel mostly uncomfortable because this hat is very tight.
Yeah, for some reason,
before the show,
Matt and I have learned. We've learned the hard lesson that old XFL gear is very ill-fitting.
Yeah. Now I will admit, this is the first visor I've ever owned. The first tennis visor. So
it is an odd look on you.
And if those of you watching on the video, this is a Los Angeles Extreme, real deal, authentic, 100% real deal team memorabilia here.
Yeah, I tried to get a Tommy Maddox signed one. Very hard to find.
I'm sure it is.
Very hard to find. And of course,
Matt,
Maddox. Mm-hmm. I've got on my number 30 Las Vegas Outlaws He Hate Me jersey, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah. So here we are with part 3.
Part 3, thanks everybody for coming back for this exciting multi-part look at the XFL. If you missed the first 2 chapters, I can't recommend enough. You go listen to them. It gives you a great foundation of what we'll be talking about. It's over at upfordebate.tv or wherever you get your podcast, Matt. Tonight, chapter 3. We ended last time with, we talked about training camp. We talked about all the rules, the players, the teams, setting the stage for the league. And Matt, the day is finally here. February 3rd, 2001, Sam Boyd Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada, for the ultimate XFL kickoff matchup, your Las Vegas Outlaws against the New Jersey Hitmen.
Indeed. And tell me a little bit about the backstory for this game. What did the teams do to prepare? What did Jesse Ventura, how did he drum up the advertising for this game?
Oh, Matt, there has been hype for this game you wouldn't believe. Vince McMahon is changing the face of football. The No Fun League becomes the Extra Fun League. We have seen all kinds of big TV promotions with wrecking balls smashing into players and sexy cheerleaders in the locker room. We've had Jesse Ventura incoherently babbling something about football and players and passion, which we get plenty of in this game. We've got the hype train rolling forward. America is excited. It's Saturday night on NBC. No place you'd rather be, Matt. And of course, kickoff, we're going to focus mainly tonight on the Outlaws Hitmen game because that was the nationally televised game. But they played 4 games, as they do every one of the 10 weeks of the XFL, no bye weeks. The primary game was Hitmen Outlaws, and the second, what they call the regional game, was the Orlando Rage versus the Chicago Enforcers. And then the other teams played as well.
Yeah. It's weird. I have a recollection of watching XFL games on TV.
Really?
I do. But I'm getting them very much confused with arena football. I'm not sure which one I was watching. I think I remember watching the XFL. And for a little bit for homework, I actually watched some highlights from some of the games on YouTube, just kind of fast forwarded to certain parts and looked at mostly. I was doing it mostly for the broadcasting because that's hysterical. But I had vague little moments of deja vu where I was I kind of remember seeing this on TV, and this was one of those games.
We'll talk about the ratings at the end of this, but a lot of America tuned in to check out, investigate what the XFL was all about. Football as you've never seen it before. And Matt, the game opens. The very first thing. Well, actually, did you know there was a pregame show?
No, I did not.
There actually was. It wasn't nationally televised. It was one of those things that individual cities had the option to play before the game. But it was great. I saw a wonderful clip of the pregame for the very first game, and they did this little comedy bit where they had all the stars of NBC try to explain what the XFL is, with the joke being they don't know what the XFL is. So it would be like, oh, Allison, what's-her-face from Days of Our Lives was there, and she's like, I think there's no fair catches. And then the announcer's like, correct. And then it'd be like, David Allen Greer's like, I think you can punch guys in the nuts. And then the announcer's like, wrong. It was very weird to make fun of this sport that was supposed to be really exciting and no one knew what it was. But Matt, the game opens with a montage. The music starts. Guys are smashing into each other. Words flash on the screen. Smash mouth. Passion. No fair catch. My favorite word. Just controversy. Don't know what that means. Paid to play. Paid more to win. XFL logo. Very exciting. And by the way, I do recommend, if anyone is as lame as we are, I actually sat and watched an entire half of the kickoff game. The full game is available on YouTube. You can watch it. I don't recommend it. At least see the opening bit up to gameplay, and then the game is awful. But
well, that was, I mean, we'll definitely get into this, but that was probably the largest obstacle, I would argue, that the XFL had to face was the quality of play, or rather the largest obstacle to viewership. I mean, the quality of play did not meet the advertising and the hype, which is why you got, such massive ratings for this first game in the season, and then such, everything that followed after that.
Yeah.
Drastically different. So, the hype just didn't match the quality of play. The quality of play was very much like Canadian football league or a like some kind of bush league. It was even, a lot of people thought it was even like lesser than college play. And I think it was kind of, you could kind of see that, you can kind of make the point that it was like that because a lot of the players from, I might be totally off base here, but a lot of the players from college didn't go on to develop into the NFL. They ended up doing, these are a lot of the rejects, basically, the NFL rejects that were doing something else. They were flipping burgers or driving taxis or being, maybe even longshoremen or something like that. And then, they rediscovered their passion for football through the XFL. So I don't think a lot of them got a lot of training, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is that maybe that's where the quality of play, why it was the way it was.
Yeah, well, and I think part of it too, there's always been this debate where people have said, oh, the best team, could the best team in college football beat the worst NFL team in a game? Like right now, Alabama's by far the best team in college. Could they beat like the Buffalo Bills, one of the worst teams in the league this year? And the more you think about it, you have to realize from Alabama alone, maybe 3 or 4 of their guys are going to go on to the NFL, are good enough to make the NFL. The reason they win a lot is because they're better than college teams, not that they're better than NFL teams. It's just on totally different levels. So you're right. That's why so many college players go to the NFL and struggle. And the XFL is made up of guys who weren't good enough to go to the NFL or went to the NFL, didn't succeed, or old retired players who came out of retirement. I mean, by default, you're starting this with a lower quality of product. Now, could you make the argument it could be as good as college? Maybe. You're not going to get NFL caliber quality. Could you get college quality? Maybe, and people seem to like college football. But as we mentioned last week, these teams had no exhibition practice before this first game. There were 2 exhibition games. Both of the Outlaws and the Hitmen did play, but that was one game they played before they started the season. Learning new plays, working under new coaches. Even if the raw talent's there, they certainly weren't coached in a way to succeed in this first game. And as we talk about that opening montage with all these keywords, we didn't get any of this in the game, which we'll get to in a minute. But Smash Mouth, okay. Passion, who cares? No fair catch ended up not being much of a factor anyway because it didn't lead to any big runbacks or fumbles. Controversy, whatever. Paid to play, paid more to win. Okay. It's like, Not a lot there.
Well, yeah, and that kind of came to be all because this was an idea that obviously wasn't fleshed out. It was like the kind of like the horse before the cart. It was, or the cart before the horse, rather. This was the cart before the horse.
It was the entertainment before the sport, I think, really is what it comes down to, was they didn't spend enough time making sure the football was good. They spent a lot of time, and that leads to, after the opening montage in the very first game of the XFL, comes another bit with the biggest star in the WWF at the time, just about to break out into movies, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. His theme music starts. He pulls off the glasses, and he goes, how does it go exactly? The Rock is psyched for the XFL. No. The Rock's not psyched. He's pumped for the XFL. No. The Rock's not pumped for the XFL. He's geeked for the XFL. No. The Rock's not geeked. He's cranked for the XFL. No. The Rock's not psyched, pumped, geeked, or cranked for the XFL. The Rock is ready for the XFL. So to the XFL, I say, just bring it. And then he does the eyebrow thing, which I cannot.
Patented eyebrow. I used to be able to do it.
Yeah, I feel like I've outgrown that. But
I can only do it. I think I can only do it in one eye. The other eye doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think it goes that way.
There you
but
go. Got a little bit.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, that one of the most awkward introductions. It's just like I don't even know.
Well, because it really has nothing to do with wrestling. That's what's incredible about it. Why is The Rock introducing a football game? Theoretically, it's really the only wrestling part about it is The Rock. So it's kind of an odd. I get that he's a big star, but to bring it, I guess it's trying to bring in the wrestling fans to the game. But it is a bit of an odd introduction.
Well, let's look at that. So Vince, one of the big inspirations, obviously coming from Vince McMahon himself, is this wrestling element, this WWE element that he was trying to incorporate in football, and something that you could say did work in his favor is that these are two sports where it's geared very much to a similar audience. You have a similar demographic. You have males that are probably between probably in their, I would say, like mid or early to mid 30s to all the way up to like late 50s would probably be like your key demographic. Maybe we can skew a little younger. Maybe like
key demographic for what? You lost me there.
For football and for wrestling.
I mean,
would you say it would be a similar demographic?
Yeah, what I understand about the demographics of the sport, wrestling for sure skews younger. I mean, the thing about football, it's America's most popular sport for a reason, so it skews wide. You get 13-year-olds and you get 60-year-olds in football. Wrestling absolutely skews younger, and that was one of the selling points of the XFL. Was we're going to be a younger product for a younger generation, and the idea is that advertisers pay more money to reach younger people, especially young males. We'll say 13 to 28, and they're different ranges, but right around there. That's extremely valuable for advertising. There's a reason why Family Guy is still on television, because it's not a good show, and not even that many people watch it. But males of that age watch it, and so there's a bunch of Old Spice commercials and things like that, and energy drink commercials. They can sell that product. So that's what the XFL really wanted, and when we talk about the ratings later, we'll see the impact that had, but definitely a younger skewing audience than the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, there's the whole section in the book that talks about the long bomb, that talks about how the NBC, how the network NBC desperately wanted football back on their network.
Yeah, we talked about this on our first episode.
We did. We also talked about it, but we didn't talk about really the revenue.
Yeah.
And the advertising piece to it. It was a huge draw, but anyway, the wrestling, when you add something like wrestling to the NFL, it's very difficult to script the NFL. I think it's something that they learned, albeit too late, is that the football is not a sport that is so easily scripted. And I don't think they ever figured that. Like I said, I don't think they figured that out until it was too late. They probably thought they were going to get, with this showmanship that Vince McMahon brought to the table. They probably thought they were going to get some hardcore WWE fans. This was going to be like their football. And at the time, WWE was kind of reaching its apex, right? Wasn't it? It was reaching its like peak of its empire.
Yeah, essentially.
So like, I think this vision, this dream to combine the two. I got to commend him. I think it was a obviously a very lofty vision, but to the quality of play, lagging so far behind that of professional football, combined with this not well fleshed out concept of how do we meld wrestling with football, eventually is what did him in.
Yeah, and they do it throughout. We talk about the first few minutes of the opening game. After The Rock comes out, Vince McMahon walks out on the field, founder of the XFL, head of WWF wrestling at the time, comes out and is the face of the league. I mean, he's front and center, a wrestling man introducing this league. Thanks everybody. A quote here: "Thank you for the privilege of competing before you here tonight." Any to our worldwide audience of fans, thank you. And then, of course, he has his famous, iconic line, "This is the XFL." And then the fireworks go off, and then the teams are introduced, and they come out. And we get our first introduction to the tag team of Matt Vasgersian and Governor Jesse the Body Ventura, which is one of the weirdest things where all throughout the broadcast where Matt keeps calling him Body, or the Body. That's right, the Body. And then we talked, it's very weird. And God, their chemistry is undeniably awkward.
Yeah. Now, having watched, we both watched the 30 for 30 documentary on the, this was the XFL.
Yes.
And they mention their chemistry on the show. They actually have Jesse Ventura makes a very brief appearance, but Matt Vasgersian gives a pretty lengthy segment where he talks about their on-screen chemistry, and the whole time, if you watch one of these games where they're both announcing it, like Vasgersian he's very clearly a young, unseasoned announcer that's trying to make it in the league. And I think prior to this, he was only covering regional baseball or something like that, or something along those lines. He had done a
little bit of football, but certainly not much.
So he's really trying to cut his teeth in this this profession, and he's good. He's just a little bit unseasoned, but meanwhile, right next to him is the governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, who is just like he's the wrestling announcer. So you've got like the wrestling. It's even in the announcership that it looks like Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol are trying their best to just meld wrestling and professional football together. Because you've got your sports guy, Matt Vasgersian, and you've got your wrestling guy, Jesse Ventura. And they're very much caricatures, I would say, of their profession, caricatures of their broadcasting profession.
Absolutely, and it's interesting when you think about a traditional two-man football booth, right? You usually have a play-by-play and a color commentator, right? And it's the play-by-play guy. He says, "All right, lining up at the 3rd and 5 at the 11-yard line. The quarterback takes the ball, spike, and kind of narrates the game. And then it's the other guy's job to say, "Oh, well, Jim, on that last play, you see," and they circle the thing. "Oh, they step back here, and you can see the incoming guy, number 38 here coming," giving context to the game. That's their job. Meanwhile, you've got Matt Vasgersian and Jesse the Body Ventura. Matt Vasgersian doing his best to do the play-by-play and explain the lining up at the center line and 5, penalty on the play and all this. And meanwhile, Jesse Ventura is just spouting, just absolute. Man, I loved on that play. They fought hard for every yard on that. Every cliche you can think of. They keep moving those chains up and down the field, and I think these guys are out there giving it their all. And boy, it was
out there fighting for every last yard, every inch. They're gonna fight for every inch, every blade of grass they can take, and they're bleeding out there and they're sweating out there, and yeah.
And the other thing I noticed too that I think really killed them is, and we'll talk about this, but one of the innovative things about the XFL was the all access, as they called it, where everyone is wearing a microphone. The sideline reporters are constantly getting in people's faces. It felt to me like Matt and Jesse never had the opportunity. I'm sorry, Matt and the governor never had the opportunity to get a good rhythm going, because it seemed like between every play or every 2 plays, they'd be cutting to something else that wasn't the 2 of them. So they do 2 plays, and now what's his face on the sideline is with Coach Rusty Tillman, and they'd be asking him, or they'd cut to the coach and the players talking, or they'd cut to the helmet communications and the players in the huddle. Again, interesting stuff for the fans at home, but if you're an announcer, I have to imagine it's very difficult to get a rapport going and a good conversation going when you can only do it in these very small bits. I think that format really worked against them.
Right. It was just not, and obviously the lack of rehearsal. I mean, we talk about the lack of rehearsal for the players, but how about for the broadcasters?
Yep.
How about for everybody involved with behind the scenes, putting the show to, or up front, other than the players, putting this package together.
Yeah.
In something that an infamous event for the XFL. I don't know. Will we be talking about it today? The big short, we'll call it.
Oh, that's
now.
next week. That's
okay.
Next week.
So we'll see when that happens. How crucial or beneficial, just a couple of games of rehearsal could have been.
And it was interesting to me, not to sort of put down the WWF here, but the parts that NBC Sports contributed, which was pretty much most of the technical work, the camera work, the production aspect of it. I actually thought went off pretty well in this game. The cameras were, they've never had this many cameras. They've never had this many microphones to manage. The X cam, the Sky cam was new. I thought technically all of that worked pretty well, and they produced a visually compelling product from a technical perspective. Where the wrestling part came in, which was who chose the announcers, who got the players, operated the football game, that was where it really fell apart. So I do hesitate to put too much of it on NBC Sports, because I think respectively from a pure technical aspect, it actually wasn't a bad game that I thought as a viewer.
The first game, yeah, it was nothing. I don't think anything incredibly exciting happened, but.
No, but they didn't fuck up, which is something to say for
true.
that all the cameras worked, and
in that game.
We'll talk about the other one. Now, Matt, after we get a little bit of Matt and Jesse, after the fireworks and Vince McMahon, we actually get into the football part, and we're introduced to the director of XFL competition, former NFL great Dick Butkus.
Right.
Who comes on the field to introduce one of the new innovations the XFL is bringing to the world of sports, the scramble. No, it's not a fun egg dish. It's instead a heated competition, no coin flips. As he says, in the XFL, we don't do coin flip. No way, Jose, as he famously says. Instead, it's the scramble. We talked about this last week. 2 players run to the center of the field. Whoever comes up with the ball at the end gets possession of the ball to start the game and overtime. And we had a very exciting scramble. I thought Jamal Williams for Las Vegas won the scramble. The ball got a little loose, bumbled around a little bit there, and Las Vegas ended up coming with it, the home team.
Yeah. This was very much a wrestling idea, I think. I bet if you were to ask Vince, like, what his first thought would have been, he probably would have been like, let's throw the ball between these two guys and have them just punch each other until one of them gives up or dies or something, and then the other guy gets to keep the ball, and his team gets to kick it off. And they're probably like walking back, like, okay, let's make this a little bit safer, or like less like a murder or something like that. Like, I think he probably started off with like, with, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's where this idea began.
Oh,
was
for
like,
sure.
let's just beat each other up and see one of us will get the ball.
Well, they looked at what are the quote unquote wimpiest parts of football, or the least exciting parts of football, and a coin toss is, I think we can all agree, not very interesting. Actually, there was a great story of I believe in England, in their football league, a referee at a game in their women's league forgot to bring a coin to the game, made the players do rock, paper, scissors. He was later suspended for that.
But I mean, it's the same idea.
No, it totally is.
Still chance.
Yeah. No, but there's no skill involved. So I think that's where the opening scramble comes in. Now, interestingly enough, I mentioned Jamal Williams gets it for Las Vegas, but famously, somewhat infamously, the regional game, as I mentioned, Orlando versus Chicago, it resulted in the XFL's first ever injury. Hassan Shamid Dean suffered a separated shoulder on the opening scramble and ended up missing the entire season. And a large number of the scrambles, some estimate more than half, I don't have the exact statistic, of the scrambles resulted in some type of injury. And so they stopped doing it after a while.
Yeah. So they just reverted to a coin toss after that, right?
Yeah, I don't. The XFL is one of those things, Matt, that no one took the time to write. Like, I was trying to find the game statistics for the first one, like a drive chart or any, very hard to find. So I don't know what actually happened to it.
Numbers are for wusses, Sean.
Yeah.
Numbers are for little pansies.
Well, what's funny, Matt, is the few sites you do find this information on are like horrible late 90s websites that clearly haven't been touched in a decade, where it's all like weird Flash plugins that are broken and like banner ads for things that don't exist anymore. It's such a throwback. It's great.
Yeah, it's like going back in time. It's like, yeah, it reminds me of those Angel Fire or Angel Press websites. Yeah, that like
very,
it was like Google Sites, GeoCities. Yeah,
it's pretty gross.
It was like Google Sites way before Google Sites.
Oh, look, they have XFL Fantasy Football League.
Mm-hmm.
We should start that back up.
Fantasy XFL?
Yeah. I think that'd be fun. Anyhow, getting off topic here. So, Matt, after the scramble, we get treated to another XFL classic, okay? Because we've been introduced at this point in the first game to most every aspect of the XFL except for one. Cut to a very weird and entirely uncomfortable montage of the XFL cheerleaders set to the song I Like Girls. I counted, Matt. It lasted for a full 60 seconds, which in television time is an eternity, of girls, no cutaways, just girls from extremely low angles and with very revealing outfits, shaking aggressively. It was pretty gross.
And that's where we'll harken back to my quote from earlier. I feel uncomfortable is what that's Matt Vasgersian's reaction to the girls. And allegedly, as he explains in the documentary, the 30 for 30, he says that he had Dick Ebersol in one ear telling him to, literally in one ear, like in his headset, telling him, say something. We want you to say something, but keep it professional. Remember, you're representing the network. And then in his other ear, where he had his other voice,
Vince
McMahon, who was saying, like, basically like say something,
hit it hard,
sexy or raunchy, or like something that's gonna like add to this like display, the sickening display that this cameraman is putting on. And That's what he ends up with. Is he just says, "I feel uncomfortable," or yeah,
Yep.
I'm feeling uncomfortable, and so it pisses both of them off. So he's neither of them are happy with poor Matt Viscursion.
It's a very honest moment, though. I do appreciate that because you're watching it and you're like, he does truly feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
He's not just saying this.
But I think he probably did represent a lot of the people that were watching. But it's just interesting, this visual that you have of the literal, like, the angel and shoulder, those angel on your shoulder and devil on your shoulder, the metaphorical, two things. It's kind of like that. You have that in this situation.
Yeah, two guys you don't want to be between. That's for sure.
Funny stuff.
And yeah, Matt, that leads us into the game. This exciting, thrilling football match between these two teams.
Right.
Any thoughts on the football play, Matt?
Like I said before, I wasn't terribly impressed one way or another. There were some good plays, I think, that would have been, I think they would have definitely have been college worthy, maybe even NFL worthy.
Sure.
But all in all, the quality of play from day one stank. It just wasn't up to NFL standards. And I think an audience that's used to seeing NFL caliber play week after week after week, I mean, there is potentially an argument to say, like, this XFL premiered when football was still going on. Like, it was in the playoffs, I think, or it was toward the end of their season.
No, it was right after the Super Bowl.
So the season was over.
Yeah.
The season had just ended. All right, The season had just ended. So it was kind of filling a void. I thought it was playoffs where it was only filling, like, the regular season every week void, but it was filling, like, a total void that people were about to experience. So it was kind of like it was going to extend the football league, except the season, but it's still just not the same. The quality of play was not the same.
Yeah, I mean, and Matt, I'll just throw some statistics out here for you. Because it was funny, during the halftime show, they did a highlight reel that was devastatingly short. There was not much to highlight, including, these are full game stats, but 2 interceptions, 4 fumbles. They went a combined, and this is staggering, a combined 5 for 25 on third down, which is horrible. Nothing about this game was particularly great. In the first quarter, Las Vegas scores the first points in the XFL, a field goal. McCallum kicks a 23-yard field goal about midway through the first, and then Las Vegas closes out the first quarter with a touchdown, a 14-yard pass, Ryan Clement to Brady, not that Brady, different Brady. And then as we roll into the second quarter, Las Vegas gets an early field goal, McCallum a 31-yarder, and then Las Vegas throws a touchdown just before the half, a 27-yard pass to Jenkins, and then they do a 2-point conversion because there's no extra points in the XFL, which brings our halftime score 19-0. The New York, New Jersey Hitmen have been horrific. They go 1 for 11 on third down throughout the game, and 0 for 3 on fourth down.
Yeah.
Just 205 yards of total offense. Generally bad, including a missed field goal. So, no. They make no mistake about it. The play was extremely weak. I will say one thing that really I thought was, so we talked a lot about this, a lot of action going on for the viewers at home. You can hear in the huddle, you can hear the helmet-to-helmet communication, you can hear when the coaches are talking to the players. At the halftime, you hear the coaches talking to the players about the plays. The problem, Matt, is that when you don't have an experienced football guy in the booth, you don't know what they're talking about. It drove me crazy because you'd hear in the helmet, all right, route Z30 to the left, number 23 in open coverage, and they'd go into the like. I don't know what that means. Like, I need some, like you watch Tony Romo now on CBS. I give him a lot of credit. He like explains the plays to you, and it's like, oh, they ran this kind of route, and he went here. Like, there was no context, so I'm hearing all this gibberish, and for the viewer at home, I'm like, what? I don't, like, I'm sure this is interesting to somebody, but, like, talk about, and for a wrestling audience, forget about it.
Yeah, they're especially a wrestling audience, yeah. the 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 thing that is interesting here for the is basically that this was supposed to attract viewers, right? This was supposed to, like, people. This is the thing that people would be talking about. Is this, like, we're gonna go behind
where
the
you've
scenes
never
and
been.
we're gonna give you the ultimate football experience.
Yep.
By putting you on the field. You're gonna feel like you're on the field. And in reality, it actually ended up isolating many of the fans because they were more confused than ever.
Yeah, it turns out we didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
Or at least not without a chaperone.
Right. Like a Tony Romo. Tony Romo could have been our chaperone.
Yeah, just someone who could explain what they were talking. Because it would be like, I didn't even know if it was a pass or run play. Like, there was just so little context to what the information that was being received.
Yeah.
It was.
By the way, that aside, a quick, I guess, kind of a related tangential thing is Monday night's game. Monday night this week. I happened to catch the Monday night game between the Cowboys and Eagles, and the I think it was the Eagles were on offense. And the quarterback kept saying, chocolate, 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 too much chocolate, too much chocolate. I still don't know what that meant, but it obviously meant something to do with the defense. He was reading the defense, and that was code. Chocolate was code for something. Because he said chocolate several times and then followed it with too much chocolate, too much chocolate.
Well, there was a great, I don't know if it was this past weekend or the weekend before, but Jared Goff, quarterback for the Rams, was caught on mic at the line yelling, Halle Berry! Halle Berry! Halle Berry! And Halle Berry tweeted the clip at Jared Goff on Twitter and said, "What's a Halle Berry? What's a Halle Berry play?" And he replied, "It's my favorite play, winky face." So, nice. Fun stuff from the NFL.
Slick maneuver there, sir.
It's the fun league.
Or the not fun league, the no fun league.
No, not like the XFL, Matt. One thing that I found really fun when watching the game was that they kept, as if to tease their audience. Wow, you guys are watching this 19-0, and that 19 is a very misleading number because it shouldn't be that high, but a very boring game. We're going to show you highlights, thrilling highlights from the Orlando-Chicago game you're not watching. So they would cut from and another fumble by Ryan Clement on the Las Vegas Outlaws. Let's go to Orlando, where they scored their third touchdown of the game, and fireworks go off, big highlights, and you're like, oh no.
Why can't I be watching that game? Yeah.
And it's funny, we'll get to that, but fans did end up getting to watch that game, but we haven't gotten there yet. I'm trying to think of what else happened. The halftime show, we talked about it, X's and O's in the locker room, players eating orange slices and sitting quietly. It was very boring. The commentators complained that Rusty Tillman, coach of the Hitmen, was too focused on coaching and not focused enough on yelling. They literally said that. And then Jesse the Body Ventura, in an effort to say, because Matt Vasgersian said, well, not much to get excited about in this game or something like that. And then Jesse the Body Ventura came out with, well, Matt, people are out here having fun tonight. That was his big selling point for the game so far. So that was how things were at half.
Yeah. And that anger, that rage only builds within Jesse Ventura.
That precursor of things to come.
Yeah. And he's for now at halftime, he's got his eyes set on the head coach of the Hitmen. And and that definitely blows up later on.
A name to remember.
Which is amazing, which is really, really an amazing, amazing thing. Because this poor guy, Tillerman was just trying to, really just trying to do his job. Like, he's just trying to coach a football team. He loves football. He knows about football, and he's just trying to coach.
Yeah.
And what Jesse ends up getting into with him is just classic XFL.
Yep, it's the brand they've set for themselves. We also, coming out of the half, we see David Spade is in attendance at this game, promoting his new movie, Joe Dirt.
Yeah, was he dressed in character? I can't remember.
No, but he was wearing a Joe Dirt hat.
Right, he just had the hat. He didn't have the mullet though.
No.
I think he would have fit right in. If he had just worn the mullet.
That's their prime demographic, I think.
Totally.
Joe Dirts.
The Joe Dirts of the world. Yes, indeed.
Rusty Tillman yells at a cameraman to get out of his way because he's blocking his view during a Hitmen missed field goal. And the second half, the third quarter is entirely inept and boring. No one scores. Nothing happens. Minutes into the fourth quarter, Matt, the XFL is desperate. They realize we've delivered a shit product here. The first half was gross. Second half, not shaping up to be any better. What do? They hit the panic button. We're going to Orlando. So they cut the game and they switch to the regional telecast. The end of the Orlando-Chicago game. At this point, the score was, and I'm estimating, I don't know this, but it was about like 27-23, high scoring, couple touchdowns, a couple big interceptions, a much more exciting game. But we're also introduced, Matt, if you thought Matt Vescursion and Jesse the Body Ventura were a bad commentator pair, then let me introduce you to Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, who both wrestling commentators and are horrible football commentators, who say very gross things about the cheerleaders. And I have my copy of Long Bomb here. These are things they said about the cheerleaders. And mind you, this is a very short list. It was much longer. I got a 15-yard penalty for roughing the cheerleaders during the break. I like to use the terms wide receiver and tight end around the cheerleaders. They had backfields in motion all night, they being the cheerleaders. So, yeah, very gross.
Yeah. Now we've got a sound bite, by the way. We've got a nice sound bite of you saying those things, so we could totally just play that out of context there.
Matt, I've done 600 hours of podcasts. They can make me say or do anything they want. I'm not worried about it. Believe you me.
Yeah, but so these two guys, these two announcers, totally gross. This is the both wrestling world commentators. Don't have a whole lot of relevant information to talk about football wise, but apparently they're much more into the cheerleaders anyway. So
it's a lot of hooey and yeehaw and look at that, whoa, hey, whoa, that's whoa, what's going on, hey, it's a lot of that for like an hour. As they wrap up the fourth quarter at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, where the pyrotechnics go off prematurely. There's still a second on the clock, but the fireworks go off anyway. I should have written down. I didn't even write down who won that game. I think it was Orlando. The Rage. And that concludes, Matt, the kickoff game of the XFL.
Well, we forgot about after the game, right?
Well, that's what we got to get to now. So there were definitely some ramifications of this game. First and foremost, following the game, we saw this in the documentary, Matt Vescursion leaving Sam Boyd Stadium in Las Vegas gets pulled into Vince McMahon's limousine and is basically told, you screwed up, buddy. Next time, listen to Vince. And he gets demoted. And I can't, Matt, I have to be honest with you, I can't think of a bigger punishment than being downgraded to the B cast with Jerry Lawler. Jim Ross was promoted to the national telecast in place of Vescursion, who went down to join with Lawler until week 6 when Vescursion was re-promoted.
So where does McMahon, like, what specific incident is McMahon citing here when he tells Vescursion he's screwed up? Like, is it the part where
I'm uncomfortable part?
He didn't oogle the cheerleaders, or
he didn't sell the product, man.
He didn't sell the
product.
So basically, what McMahon wanted Vescursion to be more like more like one of his wrestling announcers. Is that what it was? That what it was?
Yeah.
He wanted him to be more of like a showman.
Yep.
Or more of like what's the term? Kayfabe. He wanted him to be a kayfabe guy. Okay.
Yeah, it's not. Vince McMahon did not want to deliver information via his commentators. He wanted to deliver excitement and action. It wasn't about the players on the field. It was about the commentators. In the same way, wrestling's exciting, but you need people to wrap the wrestling in an even more exciting wrapper. And he wasn't getting that with Viscursion.
Yeah. I guess maybe he saw, after that broadcast, he saw Viscursion as part of the elite, which is what he specifically calls Costas later on. Yeah. Later specifically calls Costas a part of the broadcasting elite or the elite or something like that. Elitist. Calls him an elitist. And I think this is where he sees Viscursion. Oh, this guy is a network elitist. Like he wants to actually talk about the sport, which is not what I want. So yeah, he fires him down. So that's the number one thing that happens is McMahon takes him into his limo, kind of like a Bond villain, and tells him about how he's been demoted. And then the second event in the aftermath of these games is what I find hysterical. I find this one hysterical, and that's the Jesse Ventura, Rex Tillerson, or altercation.
Go on.
Oh, you want me to talk about?
I thought this was later in the season, but maybe I'm confused.
Is it? Oh, maybe it was. Maybe it was later in the season.
I don't think it immediately followed this game. I thought it percolated for a few weeks.
I think you're right, but the seeds were definitely sown.
Oh, for sure. No.
Yeah.
And the league was betting on Rusty being an aggressive personality.
Rusty
that was
Tillerson,
one of the things that excited them about having him on board. And Jesse knew that. I mean, he's not an idiot. He comes from all the wrestling. He knows where you pick a fight and where you don't. And he was really putting his eggs in the Tillerson basket.
Yeah, you're right. This does happen. This happens in like the penultimate game of the season.
Yeah, it's later on. I think in Green Bay.
As much later
on. Yeah.
So yeah, it's when the enforcers go to the hitmen play the enforcers. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll circle back to that. But,
totally.
Matt, one other big thing happened following this game, and that's the TV ratings. So, fun fact, there were 30,384 people in attendance in Las Vegas, but it wasn't about the in-person attendance. It was about the television ratings, okay? Very important. This was a brand new thing for NBC. They were trying for the first time, and all eyes were on, did anybody watch? Now, Matt, the way it works in television advertising is most of the time people buy ads, they put them on TV. It's pretty straightforward. But oftentimes when there is a new television experiment or a new idea, something advertisers may be risky on, they guarantee minimums in terms of the ratings, where they say if it scores below this in the ratings, you will get a refund or a buyback is what they call it. Because then it's kind of like a gift card you can use to put your ad in another show. And if it gets over that rating, you just pay us, and it's a win-win for both of us. It's to protect the advertisers. What the XFL promised was a 5 share for the premier game. Now, Matt, do you know what a share is in the world of television? I'm a total nerd for this stuff, so
can't say that I do.
No one does.
Yes, it probably means something where you would like advertising time or something?
It's a very straightforward statistic in that a share measures the number of televisions tuned to your program. So, Matt, if every single TV currently watching something at the time is tuned to it, that's 100% if you have every television. Right. So it's how many, at 8 p.m. on a Saturday when the XFL kicks off, how many televisions in America that are on and being watched are watching the XFL? They call it a share. It's a percentage, essentially.
Okay, so this is broadcast as a percentage.
Right. And so
so it's out of 100.
A 5 share would say that 5% of all televisions currently on in America during the game were watching the XFL.
Okay, so at basically any given 100 households,
yes,
5 of them would be watching the XFL.
Now, that's what they promised. Okay. And now you got to remember, too, this was in 2000, a very different time for television. Today, your average sort of CBS procedural show maybe will get a 2 rating, give or take. Sunday Night Football, in 2017, the highest watched show on television, scored a 6.2 share. That tells you how far TV ratings have dropped, where the XFL doing a 5 is kind of an average number. Matt, the national ratings came in for the XFL. They couldn't believe it. They were targeting a 5. That was their floor. 9.5 watched the XFL kickoff. That's 9.5% of U.S. households tuned to the XFL. That's a higher share than that year's ALCS baseball.
Right.
It was
a
phenomenal success for NBC.
I think it rivaled the World Series, didn't it?
It was close. I think the World Series beat it, but only slightly. I mean, it was in league with major sports at the time.
That was the Mets Yankees World Series in 2000. Mm-hmm. The Subway Series World Series, right?
Yep.
But you're saying that this premier game almost rivaled that. How would you say? What factors contributed to the XFL having an unusually high ceiling?
Well, again, you got to remember, Sunday night historically Saturday night hadn't really had any quality programming. I mean, they were maybe arena football, but there weren't any really sports on Saturday night. There really wasn't any original programming on Saturday night. And so I think it was pretty surprising. It wasn't surprising that people would be interested in original content at that time. The other interesting thing about that, too, is that 9.5 was even higher when you're looking only, as we talked earlier, about that prime male demographic. That those young males tuned in heavily to the XFL, much heavier than anything else on TV at that time. And that's extremely, as we talked about, extremely valuable. And, of course, there's always the looky-loo. I mean, you see today a lot of the number one new show on television this fall. Yeah, every show says that. It's because everyone tuned into the first episode to check it out. It's about how many people tuned into the second one. You can't really take the ratings from the first one and extrapolate it. It's very hard to do. So NBC gets a lot of credit. They marketed the hell out of the thing. Got a lot of people to check it out. Good for them. I would love to see, they don't normally track this. I would have loved to have seen the drop-off over the game. How many people tuned out as the game went on? They didn't track it for this particular game, but that would have been interesting to see.
Oh yeah. Like from start to finish, how many people would have tuned out?
Yeah, by quarter, by the half, how many people had changed the channel?
Yeah, because it was a game that seemed to have diminishing returns. Like as it was going, it was just getting more and more boring by the minute. I mean, There were a couple of spikes, the scoring here and there, but it was a rout. It was a complete rout. Very boring game in the grand scheme of things. And its alternate game, the one that was regionally broadcast was much more exciting. I thought it was interesting that they actually bailed on it and just like switched to, because that never happens. You would never see that happen in the NFL or in any major sport for that matter. You wouldn't just, so most of the time baseball, the MLB is regionally broadcast. So it's not like they would just flip. They wouldn't be allowed to flip to like another regionally broadcast game. It would violate blackout rules and restrictions. But if we're talking NFL, like have you ever experienced that where a game is not over, is not completed yet, and they would completely flip to another game?
Not in afternoon programming, but if you think about it, NFL primetime programming, there's only ever one game being played. So it's not like Sunday Night Football. They couldn't switch. I think, on all the research we've seen, there's a reason why they schedule these games to be played at the exact same time. This was the plan all along. Well, it's not that they did this out of panic and they had planned to say, if a game is boring, we're going to the other game. And that's why they play them simultaneously. So that was part of their plan all along. Maybe smart. As a fan, I think it's frustrating. Although, I don't know, Matt. Do you think it's a good idea to switch a game halfway through? Let's say the NFL came out and said, starting on Sunday nights, we're now going to play two games simultaneously. One will be regionally telecast, the other national, and we may switch between them. No,
I don't think that's a good idea at all. Because I think you lose, no matter what you lose. Sure, the other game might be more quote unquote exciting, but there are fans of these teams that are expecting to be able to watch these teams, and I think you're gonna lose their loyalty.
But
they won't lose loyalty to the team, but you'll lose loyalty to that network if you do that on a whim.
But the thing I will say is that, and the XFL did this, was that if in the area where the team was from, so in Las Vegas and in New York, New Jersey, they kept that game on. They didn't switch it. They only switched it nationally, not regionally.
I still don't think it's a good idea.
I get where you're coming from.
I still think it's risky because I think there's a certain amount of investment that when you're watching a game, even if a game isn't exciting or is a blowout or a rout, I'll usually stick with it. I mean,
and I think it's hard to
jump into
the second game. I'm kind of
invested at that point. Yeah,
too, because you don't know what's been going on. You just see a score and you don't know what's injury. You don't know what injuries there've been. You don't know what plays there've been. You don't. There's no context for when you switch. But then I was thinking about but I love the red zone, where they're constantly flipping games.
Yeah, it's the whole premise. Yeah.
So I wonder if I feel like in 2000 this is a risky idea, but I wonder if in 2018 where attention spans certainly seem shorter and people are flipping the channels more often, I do wonder if a concept like that might be more fair. The problem is then you only have 2 games you're flipping between, so God forbid they both suck.
I think the people want to have the control, though. I think that now with something like Red Zone and with the NFL channel, like people want to have the agency. They want to be the ones that say, okay, screw this game. I'm putting the other game on, like when they want to do it, not let the network decide.
I mean, it certainly is an interesting idea. I mean, again, we talk about the XFL trying a lot of new things. That's not one of their, it's one of their better ideas, I would say, at least worth trying. So. Yeah,
it was something new, and the XFL was very innovative. As we'll talk about, and we have talked about in the past as well, and we'll continue to talk about their areas that they innovated in, like the Bubba Cam, the Madden Cam,
the locker room cam, the cheerleader locker room cam,
cheerleader
which we're
locker
definitely
room.
Going to get to.
Indeed.
Matt. That's the end of the game. Las Vegas Outlaws 19, New York, New Jersey Hitmen 0. Also in your B game, Orlando Rage 33, Chicago Enforcers 29. A much more high-scoring outcome there. And that's the end of the first game, the debut of the XFL, Matt.
Yeah, what a day it was.
Things are looking up. Critically savaged, but people watched. People were there. The question is, will they come back for Week 2? The question is, will our fans come back for Chapter 4? Where we're going to talk all about the Week 2 game. If you thought the kickoff game was exciting, do we have some real shenanigans happening in Week 2?
Yeah, they should have just named it the SFL, the Shenanigans Football League, because it's full of shenanigans.
It's that old thing. It's that old saying: everything that can go wrong will. And for the XFL, that definitely happened, not just in Week 1, but also in Week 2. And we're going to go. Can you believe we just spent a whole hour talking about a single football game? We're going to do it again next week. Hope everybody joins us. Our website, of course, upfordebate.tv. You can get the entire Up for Debate Presents the XFL saga there if you missed past episodes, or click the subscribe button and see how to get our shows on any device you'll listen to, on Overcast, Apple Podcasts, now on Spotify, which is great. But really anywhere you get podcasts, we're going to be there, and the video version on YouTube as well. Check out Matt and mine's sweet gear. We didn't even talk about Rod Smart, He Hate Me. That's how much there was to talk about this game. We went right. What's that on the back of his jersey? It says He Hate Me. Who hate him? He hate him. They hate him. The announcer running up, Rod, why does the back of your jersey say He Hate Me? 'Cause they hate me, and they hate me.
And he hate me, and she hate me too. They all hate me because they ate me. Yeah.
An iconic sports figure. Excellent. And I think that's it, Matt, unless you've got any final words.
I think people should just check out the YouTube channel, the XFL YouTube channel. They could preview week 2's games if you want to catch up on them and watch them before we talk about them and discuss them. And that way you could be part of it. You could be part of the experience, because that is what the X stands for. It stands for experience.
Yes, the Experience Football League. That's going to do it for us on this episode. Thanks, everybody out there, for joining us. Hope you had as much fun as we did. We'll be back next time with Chapter 4. But until then, I am Sean. He is Matt. And that's going to do it. We'll see you next time for more XFL on Up for Debate.